With the NHL draft set to begin on Wednesday and free agency to begin on Saturday, we're finally starting to see some unexpected moves come through. The Boston Bruins are sending Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno to the Chicago Blackhawks in exchange for defensemen Ian Mitchell and Alec Regula. For the Boston Bruins, this one looks pretty straightforward. While I'm not sure anybody expected Taylor Hall to be at the top of the trade list for the Boston Bruins, this does represent a $6 million relief on their cap hit for this coming season. 35-year-old Nick Foligno is set to become an unrestricted free agent on July 1st. Given his age, dropping production, and recent injury troubles, it's not really surprising that Boston was ready to move on from him. His last contract was for 2 years with an average of $3.8 million per season, something that Boston could probably do a little bit more with at this point, and Chicago, well, they could easily foot that bill for a little bit of veteran leadership. Taylor Hall, on the other hand, is purely a cap dump, a $6 million cap dump, and one that's a little bit surprising to me. He had a 16-team no-trade list that would go down to 10 teams on Saturday, which just communicates to me that he had every intention of staying in Boston for the remainder of his 2 years on that Boston contract. But Chicago was not one of those 16 teams, so the Bruins did not need Hall's consent to make this move happen. This extra $6 million in cap space helps Boston address some of the issues they have with their free agent situation coming up. It's speculated that Patrice Bergeron is going to retire, a move that he said he wants to decide on before July 1st. I have to imagine the 37-year-old captain wants to end his career in Boston. Now that said, if he comes back, then it would be a no-brainer that Boston wants to re-sign him, probably at a discounted rate. The same might be said for 37-year-old center David Krejci, who is also an unrestricted free agent, but supposedly leaning towards retirement. Clearing out that $6 million from the Taylor Hall contract really just communicates to me that they want to make a stab at re-signing Tyler Bertuzzi long-term. Bertuzzi is a prototypical Boston-style player who, quite frankly, the Bruins got a really good deal on at $4.75 million per year, especially considering he's someone who's playing first-line minutes. In 21 regular season games with the Bruins this season, he put up 4 goals and 12 assists for 16 points, and during the 7 games in the playoffs, he put up 5 goals, 5 assists for 10 points. So with all the uncertainty on the forward group and the free agent situation for the Boston Bruins, this move is completely understandable, but it's a little surprising that Taylor Hall was the name involved in the trade. In return, Boston gets 2 defensemen that have gone back and forth between the minors and the NHL. They could bury both of these guys in the minors, but it honestly wouldn't surprise me if they turn around and re-deal them. The Bruins already have 7 defensemen signed, while Connor Clifton and Dmitry Orlov are set to become unrestricted free agents on July 1st, so I wouldn't expect that either of these 2 guys are going to see a whole lot of NHL time this year. Most likely, they're going to get stuck in the farm system for the Bruins, or they're going to be dealt away again. The Blackhawks are on the other side of the cap trouble. They are currently just over $9 million short of the cap floor, even with the addition of Taylor Hall's $6 million per year. Now, it's no secret that the Chicago Blackhawks are in a full rebuild right now. With the loss of Patrick Kane to the New York Rangers and the seemingly inevitable departure of Jonathan Toews, coupled with the Blackhawks somehow coming away with the first overall pick in this year's draft, all signs are pointing to the Blackhawks rebuilding around Connor Bedard. Pairing Bedard with a winger like Taylor Hall might produce another dynamic duo, and more importantly, a security blanket for Connor Bedard as he acclimates himself to the NHL. But the Blackhawks don't have anyone signed beyond the 2025-2026 season except for defenseman Seth Jones. Chicago has 11 picks in this year's draft, including 4 in the second round. I suspect that Chicago is going to put an emphasis on investing in young talent and grab a couple of players in free agency to establish a veteran presence and help Connor Bedard get his feet underneath him. Yeah, they might even re-sign Nick Foligno. Now, while this deal makes a lot of sense on paper for both teams, the reaction from around the league is understandably not good unless you live in Chicago. Chicago has been at the center of plenty of scandals over the last few seasons, including the sexual assault lawsuit brought forth by Kyle Beach. Needless to say, fans from the rest of the league aren't big on Chicago being anywhere besides the doghouse for the foreseeable future. And it honestly wouldn't surprise me if that's the same sentiment that's being shared amongst the organizations. If I'm an NHL owner, I'm having a really hard time dealing with the Chicago Blackhawks, even if it makes financial sense and it's a good move for the team for me to do so. And the fan sentiment only got worse earlier this year when the Blackhawks secured the first overall pick in this year's draft, basically assuring that they were going to acquire Connor Bedard. Predictably, that brought on the cries of the NHL draft is rigged and the NHL wants the Blackhawks to win. I'm not going to sit here and say that the NHL draft is rigged or that anything in the NHL is rigged, but what I will say is it's a really bad look for Chicago to have come out as clean as they did. One more interesting bit about Taylor Hall in this trade, this will be the 6th time in his career that he is on a team that owns the first overall NHL pick. This courtesy of Big Head Hockey on Twitter. In 2011, 2012, and 2015 with the Edmonton Oilers, the number 1 picks that year were Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Connor McDavid, and Niall Yakupov. Then in 2017 and 2019, when he joined the Devils, the number 1 picks were Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes. This year, again, it seems very likely that Connor Bedard is going to be the pick at number 1 for the Blackhawks. Taylor Hall has another 2 years left on this contract, and if the entry-level contract for Connor Bedard goes the expected 3 years, the Blackhawks could be looking at re-signing these 2 players pretty close to each other. What do you think about this deal? Is there a clear winner or loser in this one? Or are we all the losers because Chicago got something good again? Drop a comment in the comments box below, and I'll see you for another video as more news continues to drop.